Good afternoon. We are going to be reading Girlcott chapter 8. You should have heard young Timothy preach last night, Papa said when I was putting away the breakfast dishes before rushing off to school. He didn't do much preaching, Mama said. They were both sitting at the kitchen table going over last night's events. All he talked about was a boycott in the States organized by a young preacher named Martin Luther King. I didn't see what that had to do with the sermon. Papa shrugged his shoulders and looked over at me. You should have been there. He told about a colored woman, Rosa Parks, who was arrested because she refused to give up her seat for a white man. Where did that happen, Papa? He now had my full attention, for after what I had seen last night, I could believe anything. Montgomery, Alabama. Timothy went to Tuskegee Institute, not far from where the boycott happened. He said he saw it all, and that's why he's interested in the boycott here. Papa was excited, for he kept rubbing his hands together. I agreed with him when he said it was time for Bermuda to catch up with the rest of the world. We are too complacent. We know that, Lionel. We went to church to hear a sermon, not about some boycott that had violence in it. That's the last thing we need to hear. Did he think if we had a boycott, there would be violence? I asked, thinking about Mrs. Burroughs and the scene last night. I knew whatever happened, I could not tell anyone about the incident, not even Eileen. No one knows for sure. There's never been a boycott in my time, or a riot for that matter. Young Timothy did say that the minister's house was bombed, but no one was hurt. He talked about police arresting people, about dogs being involved. Papa's voice was low, and I could tell he didn't want to spread alarm. Would you believe that boycott happened a couple of years ago and the news never reached Bermuda? Papa was right. The incident didn't even get into our newspapers. I do remember reading about some protest about segregation, but that was a few years ago. Now I wish I'd paid more attention, for a riot might happen here, and it looked as if Mrs. Burroughs is a member of the progressive group. I wonder if any of those folks are part of the progressive group, Mama was scowling. I hope not. If they couldn't prevent violence in their own country, they sure can't do it here. You're missing the point, Dora, Papa raised his voice, and I thought he was going to thump his fist on the table. Those folks didn't start the violence. That young preacher preached nonviolence. So did that Gandhi fellow in India. If foreigners are part of the progressive group, then we Bermudians should get behind them and support the cause. We have to stand against injustice like everybody else. Before Mama could even open her mouth to comment, the kitchen door flew open and Mrs. Charter sailed in, waving her hands like a windmill. An apron covered her faded yellow housecoat, and her head was decorated with a bouquet of multicolored curlers. This appearance was definitely out of character for Mrs. Charter. Always told Mama that she wouldn't be caught dead leaving her house in her bedroom clothes. What's wrong with you folks? She boomed, her curlers knocking against each other. Everybody's got their radios on, and you're all sitting here like nothing's happening. I thought she was referring to seeing me sneak in the house last night, and my face broke out in a sweat. Are you all right, Hortense? Papa and Mama asked in duet. No, I'm not all right. She had stopped flapping her hands, and they were now resting on her ample hips. You folks shouldn't be all right either. Just turn on your radio and you'll see what's going on. Since I was the closest to the radio, I almost toppled over my feet to turn it on. What a relief that Mrs. Charter had more important things on her mind than my escapade last night. But my elation was short-lived, for when I turned on the radio, a loud voice invaded the kitchen. News bulletin, news bulletin. Telephone poles from Somerset to St. George are covered with posters by the progressive group, organizing Bermudians to boycott the theaters tonight. News bulletin, news bulletin. Oh no, I heard my voice from a distance. Papa's large hand covered his mouth. Mama gasped. We all stared at the radio, waiting for more information. An unfamiliar song followed with more music, but nothing else relating to the boycott. That progressive group must be an army. Papa was the first to speak. The whole island? They covered the whole island? I don't like what I'm feeling, added Mama. Up jumps the frog where you least expect it. More like a dangerous lion to me, said Mrs. Charter. You have to hand it to them, Papa said, as he jumped up from the table, pecked Mama on the lips, and walked toward the door. That progressive group is well organized. Maybe they are connected with that Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks crowd. Looks like we're going to break down segregation after all. Somebody has to start the ball rolling. I don't like what I'm feeling, Mama said again. Bermuda's too small for violence. Papa opened the screen door. I'm going to take a little drive around the island to see what's what. His eyes glistened with excitement. Turning to me, he said, I'll drop you off at school if you're ready. Thanks, Papa, but I'm early enough to walk. I wanted to leave with him, but I was more concerned that Mrs. Charter would tell Mom about last night. Nothing would give her greater pleasure than tattling on me. But her conversation on the boycott continued. It droned on and on as she wondered who was in the progressive group. She insisted that they could not be local folk because Bermudians couldn't keep something this important a secret. Speak for yourself, I thought, but her chatter made me more nervous because I knew at least 3 people in the group were Bermudians. And if Nosy Parker Chatty Charter ever found that out, the whole island would know for sure. Those folks at the top would give anything to find out who's behind this business, she said, and moved towards the kitchen door as if she planned to leave at last. Then the next words dropped like explosives. Those folks at the top even have the special branch coming from England to get to the bottom of this boycott. That also came on the radio. You missed that part. Oh my goodness. Mama threw her hands up to her face. Those folks are expert detectives. They never lose. Then she muttered through her fingers, I don't care who that progressive group is. I would hate for them to get caught by that bunch from England. Standing up for what's right does not make them criminals, for goodness sake. That group's in it for now, Mrs. Charter said as she held the door ajar. Then, shaking her head until her curlers bounced back and forth, she added, Dora, I'll come back after I tidy myself up. Not wanting to be late for school, I gave Mama a quick hug and followed behind Mrs. Charter's rumbling back. Once outside, she stopped a few yards from the gate with a grin on her face. I was hoping to have a word with you in private, she said, grabbing my arm. It won't take a minute. Before I could say a word, she added, I saw you when you came in last night. I remained silent. Sooner or later, she would get to the point. You're old enough to tell your parents you have a boyfriend. They won't want you sneaking out. She leaned forward and I could smell mint on her breath. My eyes opened so wide, they threatened to take over my whole face as I suppressed the giggle, trying to escape by pressing my lips together. Don't be embarrassed. I know you are sweet on your girlfriend's good-looking brother. Benny? My lips unlocked. Benny? Whatever his name is, she gave me a sly smile. You're not going to get a lot of chances for boyfriends, especially good-looking ones. And you can't start too early thinking about what your children should look like. Good-looking. That's what you should be thinking about, but your secret is safe with me. Ordinarily, this conversation would have made me angry because she had tried many times to drill into my head that my looks and not my intelligence were important. Fortunately, my parents had trained me otherwise. Your secret is safe with me, she said again, misunderstanding the expression of annoyance on my face. When I did not reply, she looked pleased and patted my arm. Just don't get in the habit of sneaking out. If I catch you again, I will have to tell your parents. You understand me? I looked her directly in the eyes and answered with all innocence, yes, Mrs. Charter. I won't go sneaking out with Benny or any other boy. Good girl, I believe you. When she released my hand, I hurried off Girlcott Lane and on to school with a skip in my step. My secret was safe thanks to her misinterpretation. Benny, of all people, I couldn't wait to share my joke with Eileen. For a brief moment, Mrs. Charter had taken my mind off the gravity of Mrs. Borrow's situation. I did think about the special branch. I knew I had to move quickly to prevent them from finding out the members of the progressive group. My job was to get Form 5 into the theater, sit in the white people's section, and thereby break down segregation without getting into trouble with the law.